everyone, and welcome to today's session with Pivot. So today we have a very critical topic that a lot of people we work with in the career transition space talk to us about often, which is the fact that the whole middle management in US, in India, and across the globe is facing, I would say, one of the most unprecedented challenges in terms of finding the right roles in the market right now. Also, it's not just about job search. Even if you are at a good company that is successful, well capitalized, profitable, there are mass layoffs that have happened across the board, whether it's small, large, medium sized companies. And there is a specific focus on mid career professionals, slightly more than, I would say, entry level junior professionals, at least so far, as well as compared to more senior professionals at the CXO and leadership levels. So this particular session, we have two really good speakers who are very well informed and have good experience in helping other mid-career professionals in this kind of challenging situation. So they are backstage, and I will just bring them on here in just a matter of moments. Okay, perfect. Welcome, Anirban and Shreya. Thank you for joining me today. How are you both doing?
Thank you, Arjun,
Great.
for having us in. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right,
you, Arjun.
great. And Shreya, thanks for joining early morning your time. I know you are in the West Coast in US right now, so thanks so much.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
let's get started with a quick round of intros, right? Before we kick off this very interesting and critical topic that a lot of people are going through today. So I'll just start quickly by sharing a bit about myself. For those who don't know me, I'm Arjun. I'm the founder at Pivot. What we do at Pivot is something that's very important for many, many professionals today, which is helping people make successful career transitions. So, whether it's a job search or you're thinking about changing your domain, your industry, your level in the organization, and sometimes other inflection points like maybe switching countries or coming back into the workforce after a gap, these are all different areas where we specialize and we help people land their target role. We'll talk more through the course of this conversation about what we do, but I would turn it over to Shreya first. So, Shreya, welcome. And if you could just share a bit about yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Arjun. And I'm super excited for the conversation, of course. I've been a recruiter for, multiple companies like Microsoft, Amazon, TikTok. I am a professional growth coach where at the Super Coach, we help people find jobs and then help them throughout the course of everything that the job search actually entails and talks about, right? Which includes even the smallest piece of like finding the referrals or the biggest piece of like prepping for the interviews. So the whole idea of me being an international student, me being an immigrant, and then me being a coach and recruiter, I think holistically we bring all of that in the super coach. So I'm very excited for the questions and the conversation that we three are going to put up today.
Brilliant. Thanks again, Shreya. Anirban, thanks again for joining us today. And I would love to know a bit about you. I'm sure the audience will too.
Sure. Thank you, Arjun. Hi, folks. Very good evening and thank you for joining in. So, I've been in the retail industry, primarily in the fashion and lifestyle front for the last 24 years. My passion, apart from what I do, is typically it hovers around mentoring, coaching, and I'm a certified coach. So, obviously, I help in people to analyze their true potential in asserting where they are headed for next. So obviously, while we are at our job, we just get lost amongst whatever we do on a daily basis, but the true potential actually gets missed out. So I help people to understand their true potential and pivot in their career. So that's a small brief introduction from me, and look forward to have fruitful conversations.
Perfect. And Anirban, you have been a mentor with Pivot, so I really do appreciate all the value you have added to the community. So let's get started.
Thank you, Arjun.
I think, this topic, which is more focused today on mid-management professionals. So people, let's define that first before we kind of get into the main discussion topics here. I would say mid-management, could be people anywhere between, let's say, 5 to 25 years experience, somewhere in that range. And it's fairly broad, but I think it's more specific to what position level you are at within the organization, more than what your age might be or what your years of experience might be, right? So I would say people who are, let's say, slightly more mid to senior level ICs, individual contributors, or these could be people managers, right, who are not at your senior vice president or above level, and they are not entry level folks or junior ICs. So that's, if you think about it, that's the fattest layer in most organizations, right? So you have most people in this chunky middle. And what has happened over the last year and a half, see, layoffs have been happening for almost 3 years now, almost continuously, if you look at the broad job markets across the globe. But if you look at the last 1 to 1.5 years, majority of the, I think, close to 1 million layoffs that have happened during this time frame have been focused more so on this mid management layer, right? And companies have come out very clearly, candidly, that they will continue this trend. It's not going to stop anytime soon. At least the large tech, large profitable companies, they have clearly specified this. And I'm sure there are others outside of tech who are also considering or already doing this. Now, before we start talking about how to navigate this, I want to get your perspectives on why this is specifically happening today. Why is there more focus on laying off mid management professionals? Why is the job market becoming more challenging for mid management professionals? So, we'll start with Shreya on this one.
So I like how you define the mid management because I think that's a huge range for me, like 5 to 25 years, because I sometimes feel that 18 or 18 usually get into more executive and leadership side of positions and not just people but I think there are a couple of things that I can really think about. First is I think after COVID, I think a lot of things have changed in the overall market and the economy or what the purchase parity for the people, which is power for the people look like. And then some that trickles it to the upper side of right. But obviously we're not going into that side of the world today. But I think is one, the compensation that these people pick. And when I say that these people pick the range that you've defined, right? To the compensation that these professionals pick, because in this market now the supply is so huge, Arjun, that means even that kind of work people can do it in probably half, if not the compensation, right? So it's easily accessible, and anybody who's like, let's say, somebody who got laid off is at like 7 years, right? If I would was like 4 years of work experience, still doing similar work, and I'm probably paying like 50% of the compensation, I would probably get like two people in that in the same compensation, right? So I would say be the kind of compensation that they're picking up, the company or the company is paying them. And the second biggest I would say is the skill set that they have, right? Because a lot of these new folks who are coming in have a lot of technologies that the mid professionals are still trying to, but these graduates done like 4 5 years of industry experience already, so it's easier to learn during, like it's easier to like pick somebody who's already learned it rather than like teaching them on the job. And a lot of companies have to kind of pay for their trainings or their educations or their MBAs and all as well. Companies, it becomes expensive. So I think the same perspective of one, the compensation, so financially to actually pick two people then actually keep somebody with 10 12 plus years of experience. Second comes back to the skill set that they still have to learn on the job, and a lot of people graduating or coming from a different industry or higher, they already have a lot of new opinions, technologies and skill set. It becomes easier for the company them and get started and get the ground running rather than giving the leadership or giving the mid senior professional people managers that they have the whole education and the degrees and certifications that they need.
Hmm. That's interesting, Shreya. I think both the points make sense, but just one follow-up question there, right, before we go to Anirban. So you talked about compensation as being a factor for why certain companies are prioritizing mid-management layoff over, let's say, junior entry level. Now, I mean, that compensation-related fact pattern has been there for eons, right? Like, I mean, mid-management is paid more than junior professionals. So earlier layoffs didn't necessarily target mid management, but the recent layoffs over the 1 2 years have been more targeted. So why has this happened? Apart from the skill set, is there any other reason why recently mid management is being more targeted?
Yeah, the imbalance of supply and demand.
Hmm.
Look at the people available in the market to do the same exact thing, probably a little less, maybe like I said, 75%. But then they are available to do the exact same thing, but then in a lot less compensation,
Mhm.
right? If you'll only specifically talk about the US market, the imbalance is crazy. Either because of the visa or because of people available here just to work. Um, that probably triggers the whole idea of like laying off somebody who's been in the company for so long and then bringing just two new people in that same space, right? By no means I'm saying that the whole skill set is like, it's complementary or it can be substituted. It cannot be. I'm pretty sure companies are kind of compensating somewhere as well, adjusting somewhere as well. But yes, I think the demand and supply has been such an imbalance right now, people right now. And I would say that from my own experience, there was a time that for one role, one requisition that was open, one job that was open, I would see like maybe 300 resumes or 400 resumes in a week, let's say, right? For the same thing at the end, around like right after COVID, I would probably like 900 or 1000 for the same role in the same duration. So the supply has probably doubled or maybe tripled. I would definitely think that would be one of the major reason as well.
Got it. Interesting. So Anirban, I think you have obviously been in the job market for over 2 decades, and you've seen the ups and downs. Um, I mean, with regard to the current job market and specifically mid-management layoff, I wanted to obviously get your perspective on that. But I also wanted to see, like, compared to prior difficult job markets that might have happened, let's say after the dot-com bubble, after the 2009 financial crisis, and India has gone through its own fair share of challenges during COVID, etc. Is there anything different about the current job market and specifically when it pertains to mid-management professionals?
Yes. So basically, I'll touch base on a couple of pointers here. One, the mid management, which we call the belly of the organization, is obviously heavy. And when it is heavy, when the organization becomes heavy at the belly, so the agility of it actually decreases. So when the agility decreases, actually, that brings a slump to the business. And obviously, as leaders or say the CXOs of the organization, you don't want the agility to be compromised at any given point of time. That's the most important thing for growth. So I think what settles in is comfort levels. What settles in is compromising on agility, and that is one of the reason why probably the mid management is seeing a layoff more than any other sections, not the CXOs, not the junior ones, but the mid management. The other bit also, which settles in over a period of time when you're there in the organization, settled, comfort in a comfort zone, the creative thinking aspect also diminishes. So when it goes out of the box, thinking is not there. That is somewhere the management, the leadership looks forward for out of box thinking people who can bring new ideas to the organization, which will make the next leap for the organization in its growth path. So I think these are two factors which definitely affects why the layoffs are happening. Uh, so when it comes to creative thinking, the obvious thing which Shreya also mentioned is the intelligence which you bring in on tech front. The mid management, typically the ones over the age of 35 and 40 plus, like AI is something which is catching up on all of us pretty fast, but reshaping as per what the industry wants, what the whole world is looking out for or adapting, that is something I think again the agility part of it to adapt is also slow. So when you have all of this happening, so typically the first ones to go is the mid management. Now if we look back to the crisis of recession or the dot-com bust which earlier happened, at that point of time, if you would have noticed, the mid management size would have been much smaller. So in any organization, typically because the organizations also were small in terms of turnover, be it the big conglomerates or smaller organizations. So when it was small, so obviously you had lesser people competing for that space. So obviously when you have more people for the same role, and you have, definitely as Shreya also well mentioned, you have cheaper resources available. You can get a fresher who is AI and tech driven, maybe has nuances of machine learning also embedded in them. So do I prefer, as a CXO, do I prefer them who comes at a price which is say one third or a cost to the company at say one half of it of a senior leadership or a mid level management person? So these are certain elements which I think is affecting the mid level management layoffs. The other bit which also works out is the mid management over a period of time or over the experiences which they would have had are able to build up something. So they are good at building up because they would have a strong forte on processes, on systems, on way it operates, and that is where they are being brought in to build that up. So once it has been built up to a certain scale, then you don't need them because they are not building up any further. So that is where you need people who have agility to run. So when you
To
need people
execute.
who are to run, you start laying off the mid management and you get in newer, fresher people who are fast, agile, and so on. So I think these are a couple of pointers which I would put across as the reasons for this to happen.
No, I think that's those are very terrific points. I think they make a lot of sense, and a lot of them obviously overlap with what Shreya is mentioning. So it seems like a global trend, right? It's not, I would say, just restricted to one specific region. One thing that I wanted to ask Anirban is how, like, what do you think about this current trend, right? Like, so a lot of organizations are indicating that it will continue for quite some time, right? So do you think that it will continue for quite some time, this focus on reducing headcount, especially in the middle layer?
I think, see, the world is in a very difficult geopolitical ecosystem right now across the world, if we see. So, most of the European countries, us, we have been geopolitically disturbed over the last couple of months, and that is affecting the economy of all countries across the world. But the other bit, which I think, is that somebody starts the trend and the others follow.
Yeah.
It's sort of a trend which has started, and obviously yes, there are geopolitical reasons which are affecting it, but I think there are a lot of them who are just catching up onto the trend and just trying to downsize or maybe do, I would say it is more about correction, because when you hire, you generally don't you have budgets at the beginning of a financial year to hire, and that's where you
Right.
get busy and you go on hiring, and then maybe around Q3 is, or maybe around H2 is when you kind of realize, oh damn, what have I done? So that's the
Right.
time when you need to actually start thinking what next and how do I reduce my headcounts. And when the trend is there in the world, some of the organizations definitely would be piggybacking on the trend. So
Right.
that is, I think, what's the thing which is going to carry. So right now, these are the big names which are there in the across the globe, which are into, like, we get to hear, we get to read about in the news that these
Right.
guys have laid off so many people. But then the
Mhm.
smaller ones are yet to catch up. They are yet not there on the trend. So I think this trend would still continue till the time the world stabilizes on the geopolitical front. Then at least you won't have that excuse that economies are slightly on a downward trend across the globe.
Right.
So that's my take on it.
I think makes sense. Shreya, one question before we move on to the next topic here for you. It's Anirban did bring up AI for I think he just touched upon AI very lightly, and I think you didn't really mention it that much, to be very honest, right? I may have missed it, but I don't think I heard a lot. And that's actually I'm honestly just candidly surprised, right? Neither of you really talking about AI having that impact on the job market. So I'm sure there is a reason probably. So I have, and a lot of people we work with, talk about how AI is causing disruption to their role, to the market, etc. We have Anthropic CEO who went on CNN saying, like, just 5 days ago, that within the next 1 to 2 years, 50% of entry-level jobs will be wiped out, and having other repercussions from a layoff standpoint as well. So. What are your thoughts on that? Like, I mean, some people consider it a hype. Some people are saying, no, it's all true. So it's all very confusing. But there are people on both sides of the aisle. So what's really going on with AI and its impact?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think I didn't specifically mention about it because we were talking about like any kind of different skill set, new graduates or like people who are now learning, and AI definitely is a part of it. But then the biggest thing is, I'm not sure if it's just taking away the job. I think it's just a new innovation. It's like a disruption that's happening, like it has been happening. You spoke about a couple of that as well. Um, Anything that is new in the market would always disrupt the whole headcount idea, the whole like how many people do we need to do the exact same thing? If a computer, if a machine, if a system, if a tool can do that, right? Um, would it affect the job market? Yes and no, both. Can it take away completely the jobs and that humans would not have job? No, not at all. Because you would still need some human to build that. And that was what I was touching upon, that if one, you have an idea of what's new is happening in the market in terms of certification, skill set, tools, start learning it faster and sooner. And that's what we were talking about, that mid professionals don't do that super easily because they're already into like tons of these projects. And for them to do like a new certification or do like another degree or learn something from the scratch becomes like super time consuming and not the priority, right? So yes, there would definitely be changes in the market, but that does not necessarily say that you would not have a job because of an AI, right? I don't remember the name of the company, but I know that a company back in India, they fired everybody because they're like, oh, the tools can absolutely do everything. um, and then within, I think, 57 days or something, or they realized that no, they still need more humans and they had to hire them back, right? So as much as I think that AI and tools can do it, there's still somebody building that in the background. Tools and AIs and MLs and everything is not getting built up by themselves. There's somebody else building it. So the idea is, for anybody who's like just thinking about like, would AI take my job? No. If you would just walk with the market, you just go with that speed of what needs to be learned right now, what the organization right now needs, what your job right now needs, right? So if you are like a data analyst, if you're like a financial analyst, as simple as that, there are a lot of financial analysts earlier who were not learning SQL, Tableau, or BI, right? But they need that right now. And I know so many of the financial analysts who would get the job faster, with a better compensation in a better company, if they would learn that, right? And if they can showcase that during their interview, that I don't have to completely rely on Excel. I can do a lot more things with the data otherwise as well, right? So going back to the idea, going back to your question, and just kind of summarizing it, no, AI would not take away all your jobs. You just need to be fast and like move along with it and walk with it. And like Anirban was like, absolutely touched the nerve of it, that you're very comfortable where you are at. Don't be that comfortable. The market is moving. You got to move with it, right? That comfort takes away the idea of that innovation and creativity that he was talking about. That was a beautiful point.
Thank you. I can't hear
Arjun,
you,
I
Arjun.
can't.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
sorry about that. I was on mute. I think this is a very, interesting and very important thing for people to understand, because one, there's just so many trends, Shreya, that and Anirban, that are pointing towards, decline in hiring and also increase in layoffs. Like, for example, the MBBs, right, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, have in total reduced their headcount by approximately 10%. McKinsey by 15, BCG by the least around 3, and Bain is in the middle. And a lot of people are saying earlier they needed 1,000 analysts every year. Now they need 300 or 400 analysts. So going back to that demand supply dynamic that Shreya was mentioning earlier, right? So even though the point is valid that AI is not going to be able to do a full function itself without any human need, but if each analyst is equal to three analysts today because of AI, right, in terms of productivity and output, doesn't that impact the job market? That's the question. So a point is valid that AI is not going to replace an entire function or entire teams. Somebody will be there to build it, to run it, and all that. But that person can now do three people's job comparatively. So, Anil, I want your input on that. What do you think about that?
So I'm myself mid-level management, or I'm part of the belly. I've been part of the belly for some time. So I've been using the basic AI tool, which is ChatGPT, and I think a lot of us would be doing that. Unfortunately, since I have been also delving on the creative side of the business, so there are a lot of times when you look out for ChatGPT to probably help you in designing a logo. That's as simple and basic, right? But what comes out as an outcome, whatever refined prompts you also put across to ChatGPT, is typically not the one which you would have loved to have when you would have designed it yourself, or you would have gotten it designed from like multiple iterations from an agency per se. So, being from a design background, if I see that, after a couple of interactions on ChatGPT, I think I feel as if I would have done a better job to it, and then I get back to the old school or the old way of doing things, which is making it on your own. Even to the fact of like presentations, business presentations, I think while AI is good at it, but the finer nuances of how the page should look balanced, how it should look good, definitely does not come out with an AI tool like ChatGPT and so on. So I think
Mhm.
AI is at a very nascent stage right now. It is kind of overhyped. And again, I would come back to the same point, mentioning that there are a lot of people who are just piggybacking on the concept of AI being there, and thus people are required in lesser numbers. It's, I think, not the truth. It is just that I feel that we have overhired at a certain point of time, and we are just taking the help of the current situation, whether it is geopolitical, whether it is technology, which is AI, which is actually leading to these layoffs. Productivity wise, AI again needs definite inputs to throw you definite outputs. So obviously, if you do not have skilled labor to give that definite input, so the question of AI helping to reduce the work of three people to one will actually not be there, because if you have that one and that one is not able to get the output out of it which is desired, then obviously it's a waste again. So as Shreya mentioned, then like an organization which fired and then they uh, got this god realization that you have to hire people back, is actually something which people who have been taking AI as a bait to lay off people would eventually realize, and that is something I think it's more like hyped till now. People are just piggybacking on the whole thing. So you just need a reason to fire because you have overhired. So first, I think it's organizations need to be rational enough to figure out how many people actually they need. It is not about budgets being there and you have to fill in those boxes because you have the budgets. So do
Right,
you
right.
really need people? So in my just citing the example in organizations where I have been leading teams, although you have budgets, you don't hire, because the
Hmm.
whole thing, even as an entrepreneur, when I have worked, I would just like to put it forward, sharing an experience, that if I am not able to sustain the salaries of an individual for the next 3 years, I do not have a right to hire.
Hmm.
If all the leadership comes with that kind of an approach, a rational approach, then I don't think first and foremost we'll get into a situation of overhiring and then try to figure out reasons of geopolitical or AI affecting uh,
Correct.
the manpower existing in the organization.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think that's a valid point for sure. Um,
I want
so
to quickly add something to it before you go to the next question, Arjun. And sorry to interrupt, but then I think the idea of trickle down effect is like very real in the market in general. That means when one of like these bigger companies, the tier one companies, have to fire for either overhiring or like for the other reasons that we've been discussing. The other companies who are kind of dependent with them have contractors, have vendors, or have like some kind of brand partnerships or some kind of partnerships with them, that trickle down effect comes back. So even if I have like a tier three company, I have not overhired, I have only hired because I have like five projects with bigger company. Now if that bigger company ends up firing people, I would have to do it because now I don't need these people, right? So not always for me as a smaller company come to the idea that I've overhired people. Probably it come to the idea that all the partnerships that I was doing or all the work that I had with the other companies is not sustainable anymore, or I can't keep these headcounts. And like Anirban was mentioning, that I can't now pay the salaries because I don't have that kind of work for them, right? So I think it's not just one overhiring. That was a beautiful point, but then also the trickle down effect that comes from the overall market and the other companies that I would be associated with in the market.
Got it. Got it. No, I think that makes sense. The trickle down effect definitely has an impact as well. I think the next one that I wanted to touch upon was something that I think people might find a little more practical as a topic because it's directly affecting them. So far it's been a lot of like sort of, in a way, abstract thinking of what's happening and what will happen to the job market. But when it comes to ground reality, most people are thinking about the implications to them. How does it affect me? How does it affect my journey? Now, one thing that we have seen in dealing with thousands of people at Pivot is that the average time to transition to a new role when it comes for especially mid management professionals has increased drastically in the last 2 to 3 years. Um, Earlier, let's say if it used to take about somewhere between 2 to 4 months, now it's almost double. It's taking people almost somewhere between 6 to 8 months on average. Obviously, there are going to be some cases which are less, some are more, but with the same effort that people used to put in earlier, if they put in that today, it results in much more elongated timelines for job search. Why is that happening? I mean, obviously we've touched upon the demand supply, we've touched upon layoffs happening, but why has it stretched so much that it's almost doubled? Because companies are still hiring, right? Even though demand supply might be off, but companies are still actively hiring. So, Anirban, you want to take a stab at that first?
Yeah, so the reason why transitioning is taking longer time typically is basically because I think all of us have, as humans, have this very, I would say, a bad habit, but a habit of kind of getting into the comfort zone. So when you get into the comfort zone, the point which I had also mentioned earlier, that creative thinking goes out for a toss. So be it in your current role or what next. So that what next thing gets out of your mind because you have gotten into the comfort zone. So you get your salaries credited every month on the first to third or 10th, whatever. And so you're happy, you're hunky dory. So what typically happens is you forget of upskilling, you forget about, possibly figuring out that what are the ways of learning new things, what could help me to grow in the organization. And that complacency actually leads into a situation when one fine day you sit duck and then you realize, oh God, what do I do next? And that is the time when you reach out for help to maybe the industry, to maybe platforms like Pivot, and you start your journey from there on. So this is something which at all given point of time should be avoided, which means that individuals need to have that fire in the belly always there. If you don't have the fire in the belly, then that's something which would end up in a situation like this. So that's something which is, I think, the reason why it takes time for transitioning. And obviously, when age is not on your side, so maybe when you're 35, 40 plus, so obviously upskilling also, we have to understand one thing, that our brain goes slower with age, however intelligent I am. The learning power and the skills also go down with age. So adapting to something new, to unlearn then learn, takes time, and that is typically where Even the neurosciences say that it's a child learns faster than an adult. So having said that, it is important to understand that these are complacencies. I would say these are individual complacencies which we don't realize in our general course of life because everything is hunky dory. But when a situation arises, we are not able to cope up with it, and that's where
Mhm.
it goes on.
Interesting. Shreya, same question, right? Why has it changed? I think Anirban's points are valid, but why has it changed from what it used to be then?
So reframe the question for me. So are we talking about like the why the transition, that means why the hire, or are you talking about like how transitions for like me as a professional has become difficult?
I think both, right? Because it impacts both sides of the marketplace, to be honest. But obviously, since the topic is more focused towards the job seeker and not the recruiter, I would want your take
Yeah.
on, on from that perspective of the job seeker. That as somebody who, I mean, I have heard this personally so many times, and I think there is data out there that's proving this. There are a lot of articles talking about, like Wall Street Journal frequently writes about how Harvard MBAs used to get like 90% placement earlier. Now that's dropped to 80% or 75%. And that's just one statistic. Another statistic says that earlier it used to take about 3 months on average to land a role. For mid career professionals, today it's taking about somewhere between 6 to 8. So that trend, which from a job seeker standpoint is difficult to manage, right? Because you have to wait longer to land a role and you have to work much harder. Why is that? Why is that
Okay.
changed?
So I know that we've already talked about like the most important things, which is like there's so much, like there's a bigger pool right now. So me, if I'm a company, I am looking at a bigger pool, right? So my process automatically will become 3 weeks of only screening the candidates versus only 1 week of screening the candidates, right? So that will be one of the bigger reason. Second would definitely be, I have seen like these professionals doing that they would put things in the resume that, hey, I've done like one project on that, and once the interview comes up and I'll figure that out. And then that figuring that out would take at least 2 weeks. So from the conversation, that the second or third conversation they have with the hiring manager, the loop that they want like a good stretch of like 2 or 3 weeks gap between the on-site and the hiring manager round. That means the second final round. Because then they want to read that, they want to study more about it, because they're like, oh, we did put it in the resume, but we've only done it like a couple of times. We've only used that skill set for a couple of times. We haven't built anything using that, so we'll need more time to do it, right? So there is always a stretch that side as well. Third, and the biggest point would always be, if I now have like 5 candidates in the pipeline and I've taken like 3 of them to the final rounds, I have 3 good people in the final rounds, right? Decision for me can also be very honest about completely based on talent, right? It is based on a lot of other things also, for how long can they stay, um, what is the compensation they are looking for, are they bringing anything extra on the table than any other 2 candidates, right? So those decisions can also sometimes take a week long, which earlier wouldn't, because again, there wouldn't be so many candidates. And I know when we talk specifically from the mid professionals, I think, so I understand that early professionals, they're like very quick to take the compensation. There's not like huge negotiation there, right? But when we come to like mid professionals, an idea of what negotiation looks like for them, what is a number that they're looking for, what are the kind of job profiles they're looking for, stakeholders they want to work with, kind of team they want to build, right? And the biggest perspective would be, what do I have next in the next 3 years? Like, from the growth perspective, what do I get from this company, right? So there's a lot of more discussions that are happening that kind of lengthens the whole process, right? One, we cannot completely deny the idea that feeling the supply and demand is huge, so that lengthens the process. And also, when I am choosing it, if I know I'm really good in, let's say, like AI, ML, everything that they want me to build, I have like a lot of startups that want me and they can kind of pay what they want, and what I would probably desire, because I have all the work experience. But then there are also these corporates who are ready to pay. So then I would have like the power of negotiation, right? So I think just the whole idea of so many factors in the process that earlier wasn't involved, I think it just takes that longer time now. um, And earlier, probably the budget approval, and then that I've seen personally, the budget approval wasn't such a big problem. But then now, what Anirban was earlier talking about, that people overhire. So now, sometimes to approve that budget to hire somebody also takes a longer time until unless they're like very, very sure that they really need this, right? And then they're approval. So, yeah, there are like a lot of factors that lend the whole process, which might not be the best for the company and the whole experience as well.
Sorry. So there's a confluence of factors. I think there's not just one specific thing that's leading to this. I think Anirban mentioned something that I would agree definitely has lengthened timelines for specifically people in mid management who get comfortable in their historical experiences and existing skills. And I think a lot of the points you shared, Shreya, also make a lot of sense. Now, let's talk about the most important part of this conversation, which is how do people actually navigate this kind of current market, right? How do we, knowing what we have discussed so far, actually adapt our approach to find the best roles and to continue to grow within our career? Just before we dive into that, though, I want to call out that we will be taking questions from audience right after this. So in case any of you have specific questions about your own journey or how perhaps you should upskill, how you should look for new roles, any challenges you've been facing, these are all good questions, and I would say timely questions. So please do share with us in chat. We will be taking them up very soon. But yes, going back to the question. So now we know, the demand supply gaps. We know about the geopolitical issues. We know about the overhiring that's happening, AI impact, etc., etc., etc. All of that is leading to a lot of challenges for many people, where the average response rate has gone down in the market on job applications. Um, and it is slightly more difficult than, let's say, 2020 and before market, like pre-COVID market. So what are you both seeing here that is working well and perhaps slightly differentiated? Because we know everybody refreshes their CV, they refresh their LinkedIn, they apply on portals, they do a bit of networking. Everybody's doing that. It's common knowledge. But what are some of the differentiated new age strategies that people are finding more success with? Anirban, we'll start again with you on this.
Thank you, Arjun. So, first thing first, we are not seeing this as a particular instance in 2025. So, it has been there since the time we hit COVID, and we had situations earlier as well during the 2009 recession and so on. So, first and foremost, I will touch base when we hit COVID. And obviously, what I feel is these are real life situations where I have come across people. The only suggestion which I would say, and this relates back to an incident in 2016, 17 for myself. I was not laid off. I intentionally had to quit because of family commitments. So why I'm citing this is to just put a point across that this is how it should work. Uh, One, do not waste time updating your CV, seeing, searching jobs all through the day. Uh, that's suggestion number one. Because the more you do that, you get sucked into that vortex of negativity, and it is very difficult to come out of that. So the day I left my job, the very next day, I didn't know what to do. So very interestingly, and I was at a leadership role in an organization. So very interestingly, the next day I was selling Rajma Chawal from the back of my car at a traffic signal in Noida, Sector 63, right? So people would laugh at me, my friends, my and so would be my well wishers. But at the end of the day, we need to understand that no job is small, no job is big. Until the time you are not able to figure out or land a job which you want, it is wise to not sit idle, because moment you start doing something, there are a lot of avenues which opens up because your creative mind starts working again, and you are out of that vortex of negativity which you would have been sucked into. So the first thing which I realized is if I sit down duck and I start looking and applying for jobs only, I'll get sucked into that vortex of negativity. Hence, because I didn't know what to do next, I started off with as mundane as selling Rajma Chawal on the streets, right? Uh, what exactly happened? So, how I say that it opens up your creative thinking is when I started selling that, the cops used to come and beat me up. That bribe them, pay them, they will let you stand there or else you go. So I figured out that you have these chai walas and the pawn shops or the cigarette shops, which has a fixed customer base with them. You generally go for your tea breaks in a, in say a place where you have offices all around. You generally go to the same guy for your tea break, right? That tapri. So I utilize those tapris, the network of tapris, to capture their uh, customers to become my customers on a revenue sharing basis with the tapriwalas. So what exactly happened is it's a creative thinking which came out because you had a problem and you had a creative thinking coming out of it and you had a solve and you created a business model out of it. So what I'm trying to put forward is don't sit back, duck, and start analyzing what are you good at. It could be so the other instance, not with me, COVID hit. People reached out, I have lost my job, I want to do this, I want to do that, but I don't know how to go about it. So there was this very nice gentleman from one of these hospitality chains which we have in the country, and he was into projects. So obviously nothing coming up new, he lost his job and he was looking out. So he reached out and I asked him, what are you good at apart from your work? What is your passion? What is that you think you would be good at if you have to do, if you have been given the opportunity to go back in time, reverse what you would love to do, would love to die for to do, then what is that you would love to do? So he said, I am a certified yoga trainer. I said, wow, so yoga trainer works out to be a very good thing. So why don't you explore it and you try to do something about that? So he started off taking yoga classes, and I started helping him to suggest that you can break down the yoga classes into different modules, wherein you have yoga classes for children, you have yoga classes for pregnant women, you have yoga classes for working men who and women who are working from home because that's where the stress was building up. So market it that well. And eventually, from being a project manager in a physical environment where you were setting up new chains of hotels and all, you ended up being a successful yoga teacher. So it is important also that you might not be pursuing what your true calling is. So it would be wise to step back, sit down, put it on a piece of paper. What am I good at? And then probably pivot, pursue that. So I that these are two
Got
takes
it.
from my personal experiences. And as I talk, Arjun, I don't want to put this surprise off for very long. So again, I have taken a chance in my life wherein I have moved on from my current role. And while I have been thinking of moving out from my current role. I kind of gotten into fixing up what next. So obviously, mentoring is one
Right.
of them, and not just mentoring people, but mentoring businesses also. So mentoring startups. So by the time I'm out of the organization, I already had assignments in my hand, which probably would pay you more than what you have been earning in your job.
Yeah, because you can work
Correct.
on multiple.
So what typically happens is we are so sucked into the whole thing of that the salary hitting your bank account on the first of the month, we actually don't get into the creative thinking space, and or we become so complacent that we don't get into that space where we can figure out that okay, if this hits the sky, then what do I do next? We wait for things to hit the sky and then we start working on it. So it is important to have your creative
Yeah.
thinking on at all point of time. And especially in cases where we are talking about mid leadership levels, we are talking about geopolitical unrests. So all of it. So if we have not done it yet, it is high time we start thinking and doing these things in those directions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think those are very out of the box, I think very creative examples. Thanks for sharing those. And I think, to be very honest, I think we're going to see more and more of these kind of things. And at certain point, they will not seem so out of the box. I think they will start to become more mainstream as people realize the potential of doing something as a solopreneur, as a freelancer, as a coach, consultant. um, I think that safety associated with a full time job is depleting, at least right now in the current market. Shreya, what's your take? And I would like to also, focus a little more on your specific job search strategies, perhaps, since I think Anirban covered a lot of the more innovative examples outside of job search, where you are doing something in a more self-employed manner. So if you can talk a little more about the as a job search expert, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And all the information that I would be sharing comes from all recruiter as a job seeker that I have been, and then obviously as a coach that I've been for so long, right? So the first and the foremost thing I would say for the job seeker is find out relatability. That means if you're searching for a job, first don't think that what you offer, also think what are these companies looking for, right? So goes back to the idea of what skill set, what kind of work experience, what kind of project, and then start figuring out, do you have these things, right? And then start figuring out what are your technical gaps in these things. How do you fill these, right? Do you need like a certification? Do you need like a whole damn degree again? Can you just sit and do a project at home and still get this? Can you just go and like code these things and still get that, right? So the idea for me, the relatability is huge in the overall job search. A lot of times we're so busy, let's just say that we're so busy selling mangoes, it's mango season, right? We're like, oh, I have the best alfonsos in the world, take this. And the other person doesn't like mangoes, they don't want mangoes, they have enough of the mangoes. This is the best mangoes in the world, just take it. And you're like so confident in your skill set that the world needs it, you're forgetting what exactly the world are looking for, right? So the first tip that I would give is find relatability. What the companies are looking for. Are you offering that? If you're offering that, then are you offering in the best way? That means does your resume specifies that? Does your resume hands-on experience you have in this? Um, does your talk about that specifically? Have you written projects and everything on your LinkedIn? That'll be my very first step, right? My second biggest step in your job network. Like anybody you practically know should know that you're job searching, either through LinkedIn, either through your own conversations, either through you send out cold. And if you know somebody and they don't know that you're job searching, opportunity, right? They need to be your advocate within the company itself. They need to be your advocate motivating you. They need to be your right opportunities for you with you as well. That means if they hear that, hey, somebody is looking for, let's say, a senior product manager, right? I That person should get it like, hey, I probably have like a great senior product manager somewhere in my network. Let me go find them, right? So, and I know that you did talk about Arjun, that how everybody is talking about networking and people are doing it. Thousands of messages every day, and I was like, I would not reply to 80%, right? The still on mute.
They're not doing it right. They are doing it, but not doing it right.
Correct. Absolutely. Doing a lot of things isn't the point. Doing it right, having the right approach, um, bringing relatability in the whole conversation for you, the other person, and the companies are right. That's my second point. So first would definitely be bring relatability. Second would be like networking. Third would be upskilling, and I know that Anirban has already touched on it. But third would be upskilling. Every now and then you need to understand that there is some technical gap and the world is moving fast in that. You just got to learn. You don't have to learn anything and everything. You just got to learn that makes you a better project manager, that better software engineer, right? Find better ways to do probably the same thing if you need to for years, but find better ways to do that. So anybody who thinks that the market is really bad, I'm the only one who's not getting the job. See, there is a headcount open. somebody is getting that job. If you are not getting that job, there is something, there is a disconnect, right? There
Yeah.
is something that you might not be doing right, and that person who's got the offer is doing right. So just bridge that relatability, networking, and then upskilling would be like my three best advice for anybody who's.
Very well emphasized. Thanks for sharing that. All right, so we have a lot of questions now, and we'll try to take up as many because we don't have a lot of time left, but let's get into it. So, I think the first question, if I'm not mistaken, is from Aman. I will share it here on the screen for everyone to see. His question is more pertaining towards AI. So, I think it's more about the fact that Aman's currently in a data insights analytics role, and he's saying that while AI is at a nascent stage, it's evolving very quickly. And he knows that it's filling a lot of the gaps in the type of work that he does. So, how can he still maintain a career in data and analytics, given that AI is rapidly advancing and filling the gaps in the type of work that he produces on a, I'm guessing, daily, weekly basis? Um, Shreya, Anirban, either of you, feel free to take a stab at this.
So primarily, what Aman, I have come across people who are in a similar kind of a situation. So typically, they have taken up one very interesting thing. Uh, if you would have watched the movie Intern, which shows that interning does not and should not be restricted to an age, right? So, why I say this is that probably it would be wise to get into doing internship over the weekends, maybe in machine learning, in AI, and work as an intern for some organizations on a pro bono basis. Obviously, no salaries because that would be considered as moonlighting in your current organization, and we would also not encourage that. But when you go in for internship, when you reach out to people, say, hey, I'm working here, but I want to intern in machine learning in your organization. I want to learn, I want to contribute. It opens up two doors for you. One, it opens up the learning curve, which helps you to actually grow and get to learn something new. And the other bit is, while you are upskilling, there are chances of this new organization where you are interning basis of your past experiences, and since you have upskilled yourself on ML or AI, they actually hire you. So you just created an opportunity for you by just being an intern out there. So your past experience plus your current internship is something which would pivot you to the next level and give you the edge over your peers and other people around there who are in the same space competing with you. So I think that is something which nobody explores, because people think that if I have some kind of a experience, why should I be an intern? But then I know people who are there and who are doing this. And it is fantastic to interact with such people where over the weekends, instead of going to movie halls or roaming here and there, they take out time to get into an internship to upskill themselves. And I think that is something which all of us should try if we really want to get out of this situation at some point of time.
Yeah. I think that's a really good answer. What I really like is, see, the traditional answer to this would be a lot of times, hey, why don't you upskill, take a course, attend workshops, attend seminars, those kind of things. And while they can be beneficial, the practical experience is missing, right? And I think a person who gets hired, uh, usually has some practical experience, and that's the difference between when you see hundreds of people with Coursera certifications but still getting rejected, and that 5 or 10 people who have the internship or a freelancing experience. I think that's a really really good point. Shreya, do you have anything additional here? Otherwise we'll move on.
Yes, I do. And I want to just share one quick example. And I know a lot of you must have watched it. So, one of the times I was listening to the podcast or like one of the reels, probably, Nikhil Kamath said that he asked the CEO of Perplexity, Arvind Srinivasan, for an internship in his company. And he
Right.
did that just to learn that, right? And now it's bringing, when Anirban say that, that's exactly what we need, right? If even if you like a CEO of another company and you think that you're getting to learn something from it, he asked that on a live podcast, and then he actually went there and did his internship, right? So if somebody like Nikhil Kamath can go and do an internship, what's stopping us to do that, right? And absolutely bang on when you said that the hands-on experience or the practical experience would always overrule the idea of just having tons of certifications. So yeah, just wanted to add
Perfect,
that.
perfect. I think that's a great example. Thanks for sharing that. We have the next question here from Carl. I think, Carl, it's very well written, but slightly longish, and it'll cover the entire screen, so I might not be able to show this. But the question is centered around the fact that a lot of people during the hiring process have asked him about his age. Sometimes even the first thing that he's asked is his age in interviews. So as we are talking about mid management, I think that is actually a frequent topic that comes up even at Pivot, which is ageism in hiring practices, ageism in the workplace. Given that we already talked about sometimes experienced professionals get comfortable. Some of it might be biased, some of it might be related to lacking technical skills which younger folks bring to the table. The question is, how does someone who is more experienced and slightly senior overcome age discrimination and bias that happens in hiring through resume checking, age estimation tools, and any other biases related to age in the hiring practice? So, again, I think either of you feel free to take a stab.
Can I?
Yes, please.
So again, a perspective, and primarily, what do you associate with age? You associate sluggishness. You associate the agility getting dissipated. So what typically happens is when your resume, or probably I think LinkedIn is a wonderful platform wherein I think it has become kind of a social media platform rather than a professional platform to a certain extent. But what I'm trying to put forward is you have to show in your talk, your walk, that the agility, the creative thinking, and all of it is still there. So when it happens like this, so typically your resume, what you have done continuously show that you are in the game. So it could be upskilling, it could be mentoring, it could be being speakers at sessions. So all of this, where you can show that you are still connected, you have not gotten into that comfort zone yet. So age is just a number again. So age is just a number. It is how you put your energies to be, visible to others. It could be as simple as people post that I have run the Mumbai Marathon, right? And they post this on LinkedIn, and then you have your learnings to it. That what did you learn during that thing which you did, an experience which you had, and when you share these, so you are kind of actively being there. You are there in the circuit, pretty active in whatever manner you can put it forward. So typically what happens is with age, as I mentioned, people think that you have become sluggish. The only thing which you have to show is your resume should talk that you are doing quite a bit, which is maybe projects, maybe courses, maybe, and obviously I wouldn't suggest to do the courses which are like available online, because that does not add much value to your whole resume, because those are more certificates and it's easily doable, so that does not count in much value. So some meaty courses which actually adds value to yourself, which means that it continuously shows your upskilling. You are eager to learn more, you are eager to unlearn and then learn more. The biggest problem is that, again, as mid-level individuals, we do not have this ability to unlearn, and that is what stops us to go to the next level. So we ourselves are a hindrance. So when it is so, it is important to make ourselves present, our presence felt across, be it through our resume, be it through our LinkedIn profile, which means that you show that you are still there, you are not disappeared. So that's the perspective which I put forward.
I think that's a really good perspective. Shreya, anything to add?
Uh, Yes and no. I think from the other side of the company, I would probably say if you think that you have experienced like a lot of buyers, see how can you take it out by like not mentioning your graduation date probably on your resume, not mentioning your graduation date anywhere on LinkedIn as well. So they are not much worried about only the age. They're actually looking at the work experience that you bring in more, right? And when you sit and speak with them, obviously, then just talk about all the experiences that you bring to the table rather than like just age. See, that's one thing that we cannot completely take out of the mix, right, from either perspectives, right? But we can actually overcover that, or like we can talk more about what do you bring to the table and how in that case age would not matter much to them. Now when we talk about like mid senior professionals, there are a lot of time when you're trying um, a lot of us don't have like a very solid reason of why companies, right? If growth is one perspective, which is great, but there needs to be like more to it. That means I either want to work on like better projects, I need like better experiences. The company was like hitting ceiling in terms of the kind of projects that they were doing. I want to build more things to show that enthusiasm that you still have like a lot more to offer rather than like I'm just like replanting myself to be like comfortable here as well. So I think a lot of times when I have sat with the hiring managers, Arjun, I think it's always been like there was like a lack of enthusiasm, right? That they want to do bigger things, they want to build bigger things, they have like ideas. I think again going back to the idea of like creativity, if you can show that during the interview, I know and I've seen that personally that age then this is not a big thing for anybody, right? But early on, do not mention like your graduation dates or any of these things anywhere, so that's the the bias early on.
Hmm.
But when you're sitting in, it should still sound like that you're ready to take on more and get the ground running rather than like, hey, I'm person, I need to be as a professional and I'm only here for the benefits and the compensation and the bare minimum that I need to do to maintain the status, right? So the difference between being enthusiastic, being just being.
Makes sense. Makes sense. This gentleman has mentioned that apparently there are some AI tools where even if you haven't mentioned your graduation date and your age and all those things, apparently they still help recruiters figure out the age. That's scary to me. I think that has a lot of potential for introducing bias in the hiring process. I know we have crossed our time quite a bit. Do we have time for one more question, Shreya, Anirban? Just one last question. Yeah,
Yeah, if Anirban is
perfect.
okay.
All right, great. So we'll just take one last. It's from Shubham, and it's a slightly different type of a question compared to the first two. That's one of the main reasons I want to take it up. His question is: I've been stuck in a customer support role for the last 5 years. There have been no promotions or salary hikes, and I've started feeling bored in the same profile. I have been switching jobs, but nothing seems to change. What advice would you have for Shubham? Feel free to take a stab, Shreya. I think I see that you have something in mind.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. No, I was just probably like, I want you to like reframe the question for me. I was trying to find it. So the idea is that they are doing something for 5 years, but they're
Customer
not
support.
enjoying and they don't know what to do next.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
there's not
And then
been
they
any.
don't.
Basically, think about it this way: that Shubham and like many others are doing something for 5 or 10 years. There has not been much exposure to new projects, experiences,
Hmm.
no promotions, no hikes. So feeling stuck, feeling stagnated, feeling bored. But
Okay.
even though jobs have been switched, there is no change. So what to
Okay.
do?
So one can be there is no growth aspect to what they're doing, right? So if they've been in the same role, there's no growth aspect, not going to be fun in the role because you're now on like an automate doing the same thing again and again, right? The first thing that I would say is collect all your skill set that you have, understand what are you good in. Are you good in communication? Are you good with like people management? Are you good with like stakeholder management, project management? Figure out what are you really good at, and then let's really sit and figure it out professionally. What all can I do really well? Am I good in conflict management? Am I good in like working in ambiguous situation? Am I great in like looking at the data, right? Look at all of those things, then figure out which are these roles that I can actually try to walk towards a little bit more, right? So if you're more towards the customer success side of it, you can be like a good project manager if you're already doing a little bit of project management and you've been doing 5 years of customer success. Then there is a lot of project management included in it, right? If you're doing like a lot of communication perspective of it, see if you're like more towards like the sales and the marketing side of it. Not, you don't have to be in field for that. You can be like a sales and marketing when you build more partnerships from the other organizations, internal and external both, right? What do you offer? That means what all skill set do you have? And then second, figure out what kind of roles are related to it. Of what kind of roles are related with it, then I'll start talking to more people who are in those roles. Then I'll start talking to more project managers. Then I'll start talking to more sales and marketing individuals to understand what exactly do they do and what technical gaps I might have. Now, and I'll be very honest and maybe very direct about it. If you are thinking that opportunities would just drop and you would just take it, never going to happen that way. Never has happened to anybody who's been successful. You have to create yourself, and for that, you just have to open your door and start walking, start meeting people around. If you're thinking that, oh, for my role, a 9 to 5, I don't have any timings, then you're going to live that life forever. Sorry. You got to carve time, you got to carve the enthusiasm, you got to carve the reason of why you want to even step out of that. And that should be the biggest fire, right? I'll go back to the same points. First, figure out what are these skill sets that you have, that you offer. Second, figure out what kind of roles these skill sets are looking can be converted into, like these skills. And then third, find people who are in those roles, speak more with them, and then figure out where your experience lies, where your interest lies, and then try walking more towards that role. In the beginning, going back to the Anirban's point, you probably will have to do a smaller investment. Do not take it as a small term goal. Take it as a long term goal. After 5 years, you want to be like a huge brand partnership manager with a company that you would not expect, right? So do not look at the smaller, only the smaller milestones. Look at the bigger picture that you'll have at the end. So step out of your comfort zone, start meeting people, expose yourself with these conversations. If you're not, your experiences are very limited. Your experiences are nothing if you're not allowing the exposure to be in,
Yeah.
to actually just live that.
Absolutely. I think that was quite comprehensive, very, very well structured and well thought out answer. Thanks for sharing that. I really hope that helps you, Shubham. Anirban, anything you would like to add on this? And then we can start to wrap up.
No, I think Shreya has mentioned it pretty well. So obviously, pivoting is something which is important. Obviously, she also mentioned it doesn't harm if you pick up an internship. Nothing like you learn on the job, right? So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, great. I apologize to anybody whose question we could not take. I see at least four more questions. I think we just ran out of time. But thank you so much, Shreya and Anirban, for joining me today and participating in this session today. And special thanks to all our audience. You've been great. Thank you so much for participating, sharing some really good questions, which I think are very deep problems and pain points that many people are experiencing today. So really really grateful for all your questions. If there's anything that you think we can help you with at Pivot, or you think Shreya or Anirban could be helpful to you, please do reach out to us. You can check them out on LinkedIn. Their profiles are going to be mentioned in the chat section. And also, you will have the link for Pivot in case you're looking for a one stop platform for your career transition. But with that, we can wrap up today's session. And thank you once again, everybody, for joining. Hope you have a great rest of the evening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Arjun. Thanks,
Thank you,
Anirban.
Shreya.
Thanks, everybody.
A special call out for Manjari also. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.